Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Armienta. I'm a composer and also the artistic director of Opera Cultura. And I'm here with another episode of Los Revolucionarios, a program devoted to the work of Latinx artists changing the face of opera on and off stage. And I'm delighted to be introducing to you a wonderful tenor, Daniel Montenegro. Welcome, Daniel. How are you?
Hi, good. Good. Thank you for having me. It's quite an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we were reminiscing a bit because we both went to the Conservatory of Music different times. And he reminded me that I had approached him about singing in one of my operas way back when. But it's good to get to chat with you and catch up. And I've been watching your career, and I'm just as I mentioned, absolutely delighted how well you've been doing. So Daniel, why don't you start us off and tell us how you started in opera?
Yeah, sure. I'm from Southern California. I grew up in Santa Ana. I I've always enjoyed singing. It was something that kind of came natural to me. Um, but I didn't grow up in a household that listened to opera or classical music or anything like that. And I basically joined the choir in high school as an elective. I was in band as well. I played the trumpet. I liked it, but I basically joined it because my brother was in it and he was my ride. So I joined the band, you know. And then I found choir, and that was kind of my thing, that I did, and I was good, but it wasn't until my senior year in high school that I was introduced to opera. I mean, I knew what it was, but we didn't sing anything like that in choir. It was more like show choir or like Broadway and stuff like that, which I enjoyed, but it wasn't anything that I thought this is what I want to do, or nowhere near that. And it just so happened that at that time, the three tenors were really big on the scene. Luciano Pavarotti, Jose Carreras, and Placido Domingo, and they had just done a concert in Los Angeles, their second three tenors concert at Dodger Stadium. And this happened like a year or two ago, and a cousin of mine who was going to UCLA at the time gave me a CD, and he said, you're a singer, you're a tenor, why don't you listen to this? So I put it in, and I CDs, gosh, CDs anymore.
Yeah,
Anyway,
CDs, yeah.
yeah. And I really, I really identified with it, especially that three tenors. It was very approachable. They did the melodies of like cultural melodies of all around the world. There was a section on it, and they said they had like Cielito Lindo and stuff like that, and then Granada, and these are songs that I've heard growing up.
Right.
In California, I suppose. So I really enjoyed it, and it just so happened that my cousin's roommate at the time was in the chorus at Los Angeles Opera, and he got some tickets, and he said, one of the guys on there is singing at the opera. Why don't I have some tickets? You want to come? So we went, and I'll never forget it. It was like we had horrible seats. It was obstructed view way in the top at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and the opera was Pagliacci, and Placido Domingo was singing Caño, and I just sitting there, my gosh, seeing this man up there sing with so much passion, and it was just so foreign from what I had experienced before, and I think because he is a Latin man as well, it was easy for me to identify with him. And the next day, I asked my choral director. I said, I want to sing like that. What do you do to sing like that? And he said, well, you have to train your voice in that style. And that week, I found a voice teacher, and then I started studying to be an opera singer. And
Did
that was
you? And then is that when you then went did you go to the conservatory for your undergrad, or was it your master's?
At that time, I was a senior in high school, so I was already declared to go to a UCI,
Okay.
University of California, Irvine.
Okay. All right.
So I did go, and I did actually go in the music department. But once I was there, I realized that their department wasn't geared so much towards opera.
Mm.
So I managed to get an audition in mid year throughout my freshman year to go to the conservatory, and I got in.
Wow. Wow. And then you worked with I know one of the most famous professors there. Um, uh,
Yeah, at the time I worked, he was a chairman, the chair of the voice department at the time. His name
yeah,
was Herman LaRue.
yeah,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, he a South African baritone, a wonderful man. He just passed about, oh gosh, I would say 8 years ago or so now.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, he really was a mentor for me there.
Uh,
Um, yeah, Herman.
so, and then, going on, sort of on to the next question. So, so you got exposed to, to Placido, to LA Opera. You went to the conservatory. And then, then of course, then the fun and exciting part of trying to get a job as an opera singer. Right? What was your sort
Yeah.
of first major break? What opera company hired you? I'm
Opera.
talking about one of the main stage, one of the big opera companies, or you would consider.
Well, it was Los Angeles Opera.
Really?
Um,
Really?
I mean, I did a young artist program in Minnesota
Okay.
after the conservatory after my undergrad, um, but and I did get roles with that company as a young artist. But my first, I guess, the main like a big opera company was LA Opera at the
Only
time.
opera.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was amazing because um, it was actually Marta Domingo's production of Traviata, and uh, I was doing some outreach pro stuff for them. They they had a problem with their Gaston in Traviata, and Marta was looking for somebody else, and luckily I was at the right place at the right time, and I got cast as Gaston. And that was my one of my big debuts, and then from there I did many things at LA, and then I that led to a lot of great opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, because you've been performing all over the country. I know that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I often see your name. And I also know that you're singing. You also sing some of the mariachi operas, too,
Yes.
right? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate. I think it has. I've done a lot of, I guess, Latin pieces in my career. It's kind of defined my career, I would say.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. My first major break through was probably, well, I know it was singing. It was during my time at LA Opera. Daniel Catan was composing Il Postino, and I was working at the time with a wonderful coach named Vicky Kirsch, who was very good friends with Daniel and Andrea, and he was workshopping the opera, and he needed a tenor to sing the part of Mario Ropolo,
Oh, so
and
you met him.
yeah,
You
I
met
got to
him.
meet him and work with him when he was first composing the piece.
Oh,
It
amazing.
was incredible.
Mhm.
And
So you worked
and
with Susana then, Susana Guzman then.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
worked with Senna many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because there's just a small, there's just um, you all know each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a small little familia, you know what I'm saying?
It is, yeah.
So it's very interesting. When I started, there was really no one, and but it's
Mhm.
great to see so many more, Latinx composers and librettists and singers, and now there's repertoire, so y'all getting more work. I'm sorry, I'm saying y'all and all this stuff because, we were talking about being in LA, and I'm going back to my LA roots. So
Yeah.
forgive me, okay?
No,
But
it's okay.
yeah, no, but it's really thrilling. Is there any role that that you really would love to sing?
That I would love to sing.
Yeah, that you haven't yet had an opportunity to sing.
Uh, yeah, I mean, there's many, of course, but at, at the moment, I mean, it changes, where the voice is going. But I've always wanted to sing in, the great, spaghetti opera, Fanciullo del West.
Uh,
I love the music that Dick um, Johnson sings. His arias are, so passionate, and that's one role I would love to sing. And now I'm getting to the age where maybe I could be considered, my voice is getting more mature, that I could maybe sing that.
Yeah.
So
Maybe
yeah,
talk a
that's
little
one
bit.
role.
Let's talk a little bit about that because, um, the when I've and you please let me know if I'm completely wrong. But how would you? Well, I don't want to say what kind of tenor you are. You tell me what kind of tenor people think of you as, because there's different repertoire, right? There's this,
Yeah, absolutely.
right,
Yeah.
and for different kinds of tenors. So tell me what do most people
You know,
associate you with?
yeah, I mean, I believe I'm just a full lyric. I'm a full lyric tenor.
Full lyric
Um,
tenor. Okay.
but I have a darker tone to my voice than, but but the weight is still a lyric tenor. Uh,
Mhm.
Absolutely. And but it's a tricky question because it also has to do with the opera house. In the United States, you know, I couldn't sing like Dick Johnson in these big theaters, like San Francisco and stuff like that. But in Europe, most definitely, So it changes from region, I guess, to region. What you would be classified as. I just remember the first time, doing auditions in Europe. Um, they would they would tell me that I was singing stuff that was way too light for my voice, when in America it's not too light, because uh, or they wanted me to sing heavier stuff in Europe. Um, but in America, there's no way I would be able to sing it because the houses are so much bigger. You know,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's really a question of you know where regionally you are, I suppose, what kind of tenor you are. But I'm a lyric tenor,
Okay.
definitely.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well, I'm always learning, so I never thought about the size of the opera houses, how that affects what kind of singer you would hire. But because we
yeah, I mean,
perform in a smaller venue.
nobody really talks about that, but I found that on my career, that it's definitely something that is considered, and maybe it's not talked about very often, but
Mm,
it's very very clear to me that it
okay.
has to do with the opera house.
Yeah. So as a Latino, as a Latinx artist, how does that, if at all, influence, um, your work as an artist?
Well,
What do you bring? What from your culture, from your cultural experience, let's just say, you
yeah.
think do you bring to some of the works that you've been singing in?
Well, I like to think that my career, like I mentioned, has been defined by singing so much Latin repertoire, and and I believe that the reason why it has been that way was because it's who we are. When you're singing a role that's you can identify with because it's your culture, or it's your language that you grew up with. That comes through, that it's hard to define, but it's there. Like growing up, bilingual. I wasn't born in Mexico. I wasn't born in Cuba. My parents are from there. I'm first generation American. I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm Latin. I can't say I'm Chicano because I'm also half Cuban. So I'm like, I'm not even sure how to say
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
But I have all that in me, and I believe in the roles that I've done, um, especially singing in Spanish, which has been a big part of my career. Um,
Right.
that has somehow translated in the performances
Mhm,
that have been able to connect more with the
mhm.
audience. You
You
know,
think there's been any sort of a challenge or drawback being
I mean,
a singer of color?
yeah, no, for me, I mean, I could see how that has happened, or that can happen with as far as you could say, it's like pitch and hold, or anything like that. But no, I mean, I've still had a healthy career that I've been able to do. My targatas and dukes and stuff like that. You know, um, but what I enjoy doing, I enjoy singing these, Daniel Catan pieces and these mariachi operas. It brings a lot of pride, and I don't know. It's not easy either, because I am not, Mexican full blooded. It's I mean, as a half Mexican, half Cuban, sometimes, people look at you like, oh, maybe, he doesn't know, all this, the history, but, or he doesn't really get it. So there has been challenges like that because I'm not.
Are you talking about with colleagues or with
Uh, yeah,
just the
yeah,
community?
I would say with colleagues more.
Also with
Yeah,
colleagues. That's interesting.
because I think it's funny, because with companies, and I mean it's not always like this, but I found, in a lot of companies, unfortunately, the way it is, and it's getting better. I can see it, but they say, well, he speaks Spanish, so he can play, you know, Peru, or Argentinian, or
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
it's all the same. It's all the same.
yeah, it's not the same,
Yeah,
but I
I'm
mean,
I'm I'm being facetious about that.
yeah, I know,
So
I
I
know
don't
you.
I don't
I'm sure you know better than most.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, no,
I'll
but
tell you what I find in my personal experiences. So what I find is that there is a difference between when they talk about Latin American repertoire, uh, and when they talk about works that are created, that are by Latinos or Latinx Latinas, in the United States. Um, and so it's just, informing, folks and producers and other artists, and that it's very different. The experience that, as a person who's tricultural, really,
mhm.
uh, is very unique. And, it's not the same as someone who's, quote, Latin American. It's a very unique experience. But yeah, so
Yeah, no, and going back to your works, I mean, I think that's what I've, from what I've known of your works, is you are bringing that, bringing, the story of the, of the tri-cultural person, or the,
yeah,
and because these are stories that are very important, and
yeah,
there's so many of us, like me and like you, and
yeah, yeah. Well, my Zorro, hopefully one day produce,
yeah.
a company will produce it and they'll hire you
Oh,
as
I'd
a,
love to play Zoro, my
yeah.
God.
But it's written in Spanglish. But
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah, Spanish. But I'm going to do one in totally in Spanish because I'm doing a project next year for someone. But yeah, it's interesting. But Spanglish is because that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
So that was my. So did you speak? Okay, we probably need to end this. But did you? Last question. Did you at home? What was the language that your parents spoke to you in?
Oh, Spanish.
Spanish. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I my when I got into school, in kindergarten, they put me in a ESL class, and very quickly I went into the regular, but but that's very normal in Southern California. There's so many Latinos that there were so many classes that were just pure Spanish, and that they were teaching. So I learned, my mom, she always says she learned English with me and my brother and my brothers, because we learned it in school and we learned it with our friends. Um, and now, of course, my mom says that my Spanish is worse than ever because I don't live in California anymore, and my brothers, they live in San Diego now, and
Wow.
my parents live in Tijuana now, just across the border.
Wow. Wow.
Um, but uh, but yeah, I grew up speaking Spanish. Yeah.
Great. Well, Daniel, it's been great. I really
Oh,
enjoyed our conversation. I really
yeah,
did.
likewise, likewise.
So Daniel, keep me informed about your work and I mean where you're performing, and hopefully I
Oh,
get to
thank
see you live. But I want to thank you all for joining me again for another video episode of Los Revolucionarios, and we will continue interviewing some of the great Latinx artists in the country. Thank you and goodbye.